and welcome to InvertiCast. I am Leah from Tarantula, and with me I have an amazing special guest. This is Ryan Marshall of Marshall Arachnids. Hello, Ryan.
Hello. Hi, Leah. Pleasure. I was just saying it's nice to meet you, and thank you so much for having me on the show. This is fantastic.
Absolutely, I am so stoked to have you on the show for sure.
Appreciate it.
Um, you've been in the hobby or you've been in business for some time, and so you're actually pretty famous in the hobby, so that's pretty cool, and I'm just really stoked to have you on the show.
Yeah. In one way or another, we've been, well, I have been a little vocal about all things husbandry and welfare when it comes to tarantulas specifically. So it's
Yeah.
gotten me in one way or another a little bit of a platform to kind of yell from. So it's been an interesting ride for sure. So any opportunity I have to talk to someone about these sorts of things, I jump on it. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, that's so rad. I love that.
Yeah,
Well, okay, so let's just jump right in. How
sure.
did Marshall Arachnids get started? So where did you guys start? How did you get into the hobby? The whole nine.
Got it. Yep. So let's see. It started for me. So I started, um, I guess, my entrance into tarantulas. So I think a lot of people know this at this point, but if not, I was a lifelong arachnophobe for the longest time,
Mm,
up until a few years ago, really. And I still sort of have a healthy, I don't want to say fear, but they definitely intimidate me for sure. I'm absolutely fascinated with them, but still a little on the fence about interacting with them. But that being said, somebody that I was dating at the time had a Ephebopus marinus, for our whole relationship, I was like, not about this. If that animal can stay where it's at, that's fine. But one night, it was just kind of like, come on, you need to get over this. This is unhealthy. And I don't handle my animals, but she put it in my hand, and I was captivated. I was terrified, but I couldn't help but be like, wow, there's a lot going on here. And I was amazed at how gentle it was. Um, so it just kind of sparked from there, and I started Googling all these animals, and I came across Poecilotheria metallica, and I right away was like, I asked, is that a real spider? Is that a real animal? She said, yes. And I said, can we get those? And she said, yes, they are in the hobby. However, they are, a little bit difficult to breed. They're a
mm,
little more expensive. Animals come in from Europe a lot. Rarely are they captive bred in the United States. And so
mhm.
to me, I was an aspiring zookeeper at the time. That was a challenge. So I just said, I'm going to get those. And she was like, I think, maybe you should slow down a little bit, and kind of learn a little bit. And I didn't listen. I just dove right in. Um, and it took a couple of years, but I learned a few things here and there. Realized right away that kind of what everyone was saying about these animals as far as husbandry goes and natural history wasn't exactly what I was observing and seeing with my spiders.
Mm.
And then they just started reproducing for me. And with that, it kind of snowballed, I suppose. I sold those babies, and then I got more of that same species and more of that same species, up until and then during all that time, I got a zookeeping job. So I was working for various AZA facilities. I worked for,
Mm.
I think, a total of three, before I ended up coming back home, which is in Michigan. Um, but all that time, I was just kind of working with them, and then COVID hit, and I had met Jessica in 2019, which is my partner, and kind of got her involved, and then we kind of paired off, and then I think we officially decided during COVID, let's make Marshall Arachnids a thing. Let's diversify species from there. And we
Awesome.
just both decided that we didn't want to work for anybody anymore because of the COVID thing. Kind of it complicated so many things,
Oh
even for
yeah.
keepers. And it's no secret. Like I'm a very opinionated person, and COVID just threw everything. Through the ringer, and we just said, let's just do our own thing, and let's just roll the dice and see what happens. Like if you're all in, I'm all in. So
Awesome.
here we are. Here we are today. We just built our new facility down in Tennessee just for the spiders. We have a little living space that is kind of up above us here, which is kind of still in progress.
Oh, that's
But
amazing.
we're doing it. So here we are.
That is so
Yep.
cool. I'd love to hear that because I also was a pretty staunch arachnophobe as well. So
Okay.
once
Yeah.
once that fascination hits, though, it hits hard.
You're right. Yeah, and you know what's funny is, and I'm sure you can comment on this too, but if you have friends over or people who are like afraid of the animals, if they come over enough and they're around them enough in their
Uh-huh.
enclosures, they start to that interest sparks in them too. They see them in a different light, because they're behind
Yes.
glass. They see their behaviors. I even got Jessica's mom, who is an arachnophobe, over here misting them, and I see the gears starting to turn, and she's talking to them now. So yeah,
Oh,
there's
that's
something
cool.
about them. Yeah, it's something about it. If you're around them enough, you're like, well, they're really misunderstood animals. So it's cool to hear. I think that's kind of a common thing around all of us in the hobby,
I think
in
so
one way or
too.
another. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. A
for
lot of people
sure.
started that way. Yeah,
Simon of the
it's
Mantis
cool.
Garden says that we are not alone. I agree, Simon. Well,
Yep,
there's a lot
me
of
too.
arachnophobes, previous arachnophobes who are definitely in the hobby. So I agree with you on that,
Yes.
Ryan.
It's very
Um,
cool. It's cool that we have something tangible that can help us get, because I don't know about everyone else, but I took that and I kind of started applying that to other things in life, like
mhm,
other things that I'm unreasonably afraid of. You know what I mean? And it all comes down to education, right? The more you know, the more
yes,
you understand, the less you are afraid. So
yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
I agree. I definitely did apply that to a lot of other things in my life. I'm no longer like afraid to stand up for myself at times because sometimes it's hard for me to be like, no, I don't want this, or you know,
same. Hmm.
it's hard to say no
I
to
know.
things.
Well, yeah, especially if you're a good person, and you want to be a good person, it's difficult to say no sometimes. You feel guilty.
Yeah,
At least I do. Yeah.
I do too. I have so much guilt.
Yeah. I'm with you there. Yeah.
So, how many arachnids or tarantulas, like in one at one time, how many would you say you have
So
typically?
it's funny that you asked that. So I actively tell Jessica to not tell me that number because I don't want to know. When I start looking at it that way, I get overwhelmed.
Oh, sure.
I would say we have a lot more spiders than most, but not as much as some. And I
Okay.
want to keep it small. I would say at any given time, there's at least 500 animals. But in the spring, we like to go with the flow of nature. So during the winter months, we kind of pair animals and cool them down, and then we hatch them in the spring. So in the spring, we could
Uh-huh.
produce over 1,000 babies, just a
Wow.
thousand babies. So that number goes up quite a bit at any given time, really.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I would say I'm comfortable with saying at least 500 at any given time. But yeah,
Wow. That's
that's
awesome,
me not
though.
asking. Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
want to know any
yeah.
more than that. Yeah. She knows the exact
Okay.
number. She's always like, "Do you wanna know?" And I said, "Nope, nope, nope.
You're like, nope, mm-mm, just
I'm
leave
good."
that, leave it. I don't want
Yep,
to be overwhelmed. I get that. I totally
exactly. Yep,
understand it. I'm
yep.
personally I'm at about 76, I believe.
That's a
And
good
right now
number.
I'm kind of, yeah, right. I'm just kind of like, okay, right now like I can handle that,
Good.
and
It's good
I
good
don't
health,
want to,
right?
yeah, I don't want to add too much
Yeah,
more to, yeah, it's
smart.
crazy because that can happen pretty quickly. You become overwhelmed with your collection, and you
Yes,
just jump in.
you get burned out. You get burned
Yeah,
out.
right. and
Yeah, it's too
and I
much.
definitely don't want to do that.
No, I think, yeah, you've got enough to keep you busy. 76 animals
Yeah.
that's enough to keep you a little busy during the week,
Oh
so
yeah,
that's good.
for sure. You have to
Yeah,
split them up too. You split them up into the groups, and each day that's the group that you're feeding and watering. And so, like for me,
smart.
that's the best way.
It is the best way. Yeah, period. Unless you have a lot of time on your hands, to sit and do it then not stop until you're done,
Yeah,
divvying them
yeah,
up into sections. Yeah, that's the way to go. You're right
awesome.
on.
Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Simon had a question for you. He wanted to know because he has an escaped tarantula, and he's wondering if you know a good way to catch them because they don't
sure.
know where it is. So, what's a good way to draw
Yeah.
them out? Hopefully, get them back in their enclosure.
Yeah. Interesting question. So, we have some adult animals get out sometimes, not because their enclosures are inadequate, but because
Mm,
I don't like to lock things. I do that on purpose. In fact, let me look behind me. No, everything's locked today. Every time I do one of these, someone always comments, "Your enclosures are not locked." And I'm like, "I know. I know. But sometimes the terrestrial species will get out. So the first thing is identify how it got out. Number one,
Okay.
because then we can learn from that. Number two, what kind of species, what animal, what kind of animal is it, terrestrial or arboreal? That's going to really make a difference. Usually, where you're going to find that animal,
Mm.
up or down, that kind of speaks for itself, right? And then
Hmm.
number three,
Absolutely.
um, more so with the terrestrial species, even if this is a spiderling or an adult animal, and no one talks about this, but of course I'm going to say it. We provide them a spot of heat. So we take a heat lamp and we shine it either on a wall or on the ground, and we leave it on 24/7. We don't. It's not a
Smart.
high. It's just a little thermal gradient, especially if you're in a northern climate where it's cool, or if you're in a basement, that animal is going to go out of its way to get warm, right? Yeah, she left the
Uh-huh.
lid off. Yep, yep. That that's me. I do that.
That'll do it.
Yep, yeah. Don't feel bad. Um,
Yeah.
so that's usually what I like to do. I start around the enclosure first, obviously, because sometimes I don't go too far.
Yeah.
But that being said, I have found them in other rooms before. We don't have that
Yeah.
problem now. We took care of that when we built this place. But yes, fi giving them a little source of heat is usually how we go about doing that. And then I look for them at night. I actually use a little headlamp, and I just go around. I always find them at night because they tend to start wandering at night. They feel safer that way. They just come out.
Makes
And
sense.
again, that's spiderling, juvenile, adult, doesn't matter. But that's what I would start doing. So, like I said, get a clamp lamp, put a little source of heat on it, either on the wall or facing toward the ground,
Uh-huh.
and let them come. Usually, just let them come to you. But
That is
you have to get, yeah,
honestly that's
yeah.
genius on in my opinion because I had an escapee once, actually a Monocentropas palfori that got
There it
away
is.
from
Yeah.
me and yeah,
Hmm.
my
Hmm.
first old world. And so for me, I was like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna put this one here. You know, I was trying to rehouse it, and they were so fast, like startlingly fast for me at that time.
Hmm.
And so it just got away. It was loose in my house for like a month.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
actually didn't find it. My cat did. So one of my cats was just staring at something for, and I'm going, what is going on? And so I look where she's
Wow.
looking, and sure enough, there's my tarantula, and I was like, "Oh, get the catch cup. We gotta get him."
Yeah, that's a
You
good
know,
point too. Rely if you have furry friends, usually furry friends are much better at finding things than you are. So
they'll
keep an
tell
eye on
you
your furry friends. You're right. That's a good point. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. But yeah, definitely.
definitely.
So, yep.
But I like the heat. I like the heat source. I think that's a really great idea because they will seek out that heat, and then searching at night is like probably the best.
Yeah, it is. And you can pick up well, I guess not really eye shine, but it's just I don't know what it is. Like if all the lights are off and you are focusing on one area with
Mm.
a bright light on your head, like that's how we do husbandry usually.
Hmm.
You can see things better. It draws your eyes to things, and then you can kind of see shadows like in corners. Like if something's gonna hide somewhere, be like, oh, that would be a nice little spot to check. But we made a joke. We had one just get out recently. It was a Xenesthus species, I
Oh,
think, again because I left the enclosure unlocked. Um, I'm not afraid to admit I do that.
it's a
I don't
trend.
advise
It's a
other people
trend
do
for
that. Yeah, yeah. It's a
no
trend for
worries.
sure. And let me explain. The reason I do that is because we keep Exoterra enclosures, as you can see behind me, and that
Uh
little
huh.
latch, when I click it open, it scares everything. Everything gets scared of that.
Oh,
You know what I mean? So I don't like
yeah,
to do that, especially since we let moms rear their babies in tank.
yeah.
I don't like to do that unnecessarily. So I just leave it open. Usually I don't have problems, but sometimes it happens, but we're equipped
It
to deal with
happens.
that. I don't advise you guys to do that, but, that anyway, people are gonna
No
ask,
worries.
so
Actually, that's really cool that you let moms rear young in the tank because I know that a lot of breeders like will pull egg sacs and then kind of incubate them.
yep.
So, do you feel that you get healthier spiderlings that way, or
Yeah, in fact, I know we do. Yeah,
cool?
I don't know exactly what's going on, and what that relationship is, but there is
Uh,
something with that happens there where our babies do come out larger every single time than
nice.
pulled counterparts. Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's just there's something going on. And we like to give the moms in tank those brooding temperatures. So if we can just be hands off and let mom do it, it's a pain getting them out. I will say that there's a trade-off to this. We have to it takes time getting babies out of tank, and
Oh yeah,
sometimes we end up leaving some with mom for a long time just because we miss them. But again, it's just not an issue. Like the babies do really well; they come out exceptionally large. So yeah, that's to me, that's the way to go if you're
that's
equipped to deal with
incredible.
it.
That's
Yeah,
really, really cool. I think that's, I mean, it makes sense because that's how it's going to happen in the wild anyway.
right.
Um, but I think that's actually kind of revolutionary, like in it kind of in the breeding world and stuff. Because I know a lot of breeders will pull them out and incubate
Yeah,
them, wait for them to come. So that's I'm interested. I think that's
it's
rad.
yeah, and I wish I could explain to you what's going on there. You just have to take my word for it. I don't know how, you know what I mean? I wish I understood, but they do. It's like they're almost double the size. I don't know. It's crazy. But all I'm doing is I'm doing less. I'm just letting it happen,
Yeah,
and they're just healthier because of it. So, you're right. It is revolutionary in a sense that it's not the norm, but really I'm just doing less and letting them do it. We're
yeah,
just
I love
hands
it.
off.
I
Yeah.
think it's really smart. Simon says he will swap with you, letting mantises run up to the walls.
So
It's
funny
funny.
story. That is funny. So Jessica likes mantises too. She has a lot of ghost mantids,
Awesome.
Paradoxa, and I love them too. They're amazing. But they just produce nonstop for her. And sometimes, at least this happened one time. We learned real quick, but we set a ooth um in a cabinet. I think we're
Uh-huh.
like, okay, it hasn't hatched yet. It's way beyond. So we put it in the drawer, and then we came back. I think I want to say 3 days later, and it looked like ants all over our ceiling in our house because they had
Oh no.
hatched and they all dispersed all over the ceiling. Yeah, so
And they're
uh,
so tiny. I get how you could mistake them for ants. That's funny.
well, they move. Yeah, they move like ants during like that nymph stage.
Mhm.
Their movement is different. So I'm like, oh my god, there's an ant outbreak, and then we get closer. We start catching them. Thank God we didn't start squishing them. And we're like, these are
Right.
baby mantids. Like, oh no,
How cool is
that was
that
fun.
though?
It is
Yeah,
fun. It's fun.
Simon,
A lot of fun.
I know that he likes to let a few of his species to like kind of free roam in his bug room. So
Cool.
that's really cool. I can't do that because I have cats, and
Yeah.
I don't think they would do very well free roaming in
What
my house.
No, they wouldn't last very long, probably not. But if you can do it, you're right.
Unfortunately,
Yeah, that's cool. I've
yeah.
seen videos. I don't know who it is, but someone in their bug room has like those big orb weavers that just kind of set up
Oh,
shop hanging from the ceiling. I'm like, man, that's so cool. That would creep me out, but super cool.
that is really cool.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
jealous
So,
of people
okay,
who
so
can pull that off.
you did
Keep
mention a
going.
little bit about husbandry, so that's a really great segue into the next question. So, do you
Sure.
prefer to keep your tarantulas in bioactive enclosures or naturalistic? Because I
Great
do
question.
naturalistic mostly. So,
Yes. Yeah, I think do absolutely do whatever works for you.
mm,
I can't quantify and whether or not one is better for the other, but we have done bioactive for so long. And for us, we find it to be absolutely like minimally involved. We just kind
mm,
of, if you can see behind me with the plants and everything,
yeah,
we're hands off with all of it. And we fertilize every so often with a natural fertilizer. So we do bioactive. It's nothing for us to just walk by a tank and supplement with springtails or dwarf white isopods and just
nice.
let it go. Yeah, I haven't really had an issue. We avoid the larger Pocelio isopod species, and that's
Hmm.
usually what we recommend to customers just because we've never had a problem, but we do know that they have a dietary like protein requirement, so we don't
Yeah,
use those. But other than
right,
that,
right.
yeah, we find it so simple for us and our environment to just do bioactive and let it go, let everything happen. You know,
Awesome. Very cool.
yeah.
Do you have like a does your humidity in your critter room, does it stay at like a certain level, or do you find
No,
that it's
so yeah, great question. I'm glad you said that. Because we were really trying to hit home with our customers that like not everyone's environment is the same, which is
right?
inevitably going to affect your approach to your husbandry for your specific species. So for
Absolutely.
us, yeah, and that's why, care guides are great, but I would say I've never done it the care guide way, not one time.
Yeah, me
So
neither,
I just
because
good.
they're like a
Yeah.
basic kind of, you know, I feel like they're just the bare minimum care guide, you know what I mean? These are just like
Yep.
guidelines essentially.
Exactly. Yes,
So yeah.
it's not the book. It's just that well, it might help you in
Mm,
a sense compare with what you're finding about the animal's natural history. Be like, oh, that's how they're applying that, you know. But then again, in addition to natural history, like we just said, your environment's going to be different than who wrote that care guide. So
mhm,
just keep that in mind. But to answer your question, no, it varies quite a bit. We do hand mist. We'll probably automate that here soon. But I've always been a fan of hand misting our enclosures every day, if not every other day. If you
cool.
can kind of see behind me, I've got a big mini split back there, up
Oh
above me.
yeah.
That's controlling the climate in the room. And this time of year, when it's cooler outside, it's
Uh-huh.
going to run a lot. It's going to put out a lot of heat. It's going to dry the air out, right? So now
Oh yeah.
we have to compensate for that. Um, which I honestly think our tanks do better this time of year because things we soak them and then they dry out real quick, and the plants seem to really like that. I think the
Mhm,
spiders do too.
mhm.
But we don't actively monitor a percentage of humidity. I keep track of it, but I'm not like we have to attain this temperature, or this
Sure.
percentage. We don't do that. Yeah, it's we couldn't.
Yeah.
Um,
Th-
yeah.
for me, that would
So
just be way too involved. Like,
yes,
I mean,
yeah,
it's a great, it's a great idea in theory,
yes,
but it's just not
yes,
realistic to really, you know, try that.
yeah,
Especially if you have a lot of animals like we do. Like, it's just not going to
exactly.
happen.
Yes,
That
and
makes
what I
sense.
try to tell people is like that's it's okay to know, right? And I say it all the time. It's okay to know what the humidity is, but don't stress trying to achieve a number. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like having your animal have access to those basic necessities, those resources, water, heat, light. That's what matters.
That's
Like the
enough.
humidity, yeah,
Yeah.
humidity as it changes will tell you how you change your husbandry, maybe. But
Yep.
yeah, so hopefully that answers your question.
No, I totally relate to that. I mean, I live
Perfect.
in Colorado, so
Right.
we're always a mile high above sea level anyway. So the altitude
Very
alone,
different. Yeah,
yeah. Altitude
yeah,
definitely makes the air a lot thinner, and so when it does get cold here, like any moisture in the air is just zapped because the
yeah.
heater,
Mm,
so
yep.
I have to do my weekly, rounds and stuff and make sure everybody has enough moisture because if I don't, I mean, I could have a dehydrated tarantula pretty quick.
Yep,
Yeah,
very quick, you're
especially
right.
that those Zenisa species or the Pamphobetus, and they are very
Yes.
moisture dependent, so they're not as hardy as some of the others.
Right, right, yeah, and that's I'm glad you said that, like,
Yeah.
we have a tendency, at least in the United States, to be like a tarantula is a tarantula is a tarantula, and
Right.
I want to differentiate by the species very different. Even within the same
Yeah.
genus, species are very different.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm glad you said that. Yeah, very
Yeah.
different.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah. My Zenesis intermedia, she will let me know very very quickly if she does not have enough moisture in her
Ours do
enclosure
too.
or like yeah they're
Yeah.
I'm always on her like, oh, are you good?
Yes.
you
Yeah,
know
that's and which is it's amazing. Yeah, and, that speaks to something else too. It's like behaviorally, like, they talk to you through
they
that
do.
behavior, and, that yeah, it's very important to watch them. I think I advocate for that a lot. Like, just spend a minute watching
Yes,
them through different parts of the day. You'll learn a lot, you know?
absolutely. That's actually been
Yeah,
kind of a hot button topic like the past couple of weeks in the
sure.
community, whether or not tarantulas have kind of that intelligence, and or if they have like emotional behaviors and that kind of thing. And I'm over here
Mhm.
like, yeah,
I know for a lot of us, it's like, of course they do. Of course there's
yeah,
a lot more going on there. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah. I definitely think
yeah.
so. They know what day they get fed. They know, like when they need that moisture. Like I said, my Zenitsis will let me know. She'll be right on the wall of her enclosure, like hello, or in the
Sure.
water dish or something. So you can definitely tell. And Simon actually asked a great question about this. He asked, how much do spiders usually drink? He says that his seem to drink a bottle cap full every day. Um, I
Mm,
would say that if that is happening, because sometimes they will just get into their water dish or their bottle cap, they'll just get in there and like spray their water everywhere or fill it with dirt, and that's
Mhm.
not necessarily an indication of their thirst or, need for that moisture. But if that is happening, like if they are actually drinking, then I would say that, that's not totally normal, but that's
Yeah,
definitely a
it's kinda
thirsty, go
yeah,
ahead.
I think, yeah, so that kind of feeds into what we were just talking about environment, right?
Hmm.
And of course, species. But historically speaking, we've accepted in the hobby that I've heard this term way too often, and it drives me insane, but they're sealed. They're hermetically sealed. When in fact,
Mm-hmm.
it's the opposite. Like through the fusion and whatnot, like the animals lose quite a bit of water. And
Uh-huh.
in fact, um, this is not my work, but Becky O'Neill, the PhD candidate, I'm going to speak with her tomorrow, but she posted a study where a lot of these animals that have large abdomens, depending on the type of year, they might even be starving,
Uh-huh.
but they're retaining so much water, right? So it's like it's not that abdomen you're seeing is not like from eating, it's from drinking. So
Hmm.
yes, they absolutely can. I know our animals, especially this time of year, we
Yeah,
do provide them with a little water dish, but we mist more frequently. I think the animals cue in on mist more than anything else. Even if they have a water dish, it kind of
I
triggers them
agree.
to drink.
Yeah,
Yep. So that just comes down to environment. I could say some of our AVICs drink every single day from the droplets that we drink that we
sure.
provide for them. And then in the summer they retain water much better because the humidity's higher. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's completely normal, but it's not abnormal either.
Yeah,
There's factors to consider too, like what species is it? Is it wild caught? Is it possible that it has parasite? Or is it
right.
just it's dry and it's thirsty? But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. There's a lot.
Tarantulas being tarantulas.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Yep,
For
our AVICs
sure.
drink a lot. They drink a lot of water, so, and they just always
Yeah.
have. I've raised most of our animals in our adult collection I've raised since spiderlings, and I just this time of year, that's just what they do. They just drink a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the temperatures get cold and, the heaters come out, so there's
Yep.
definitely gonna be that need for more moisture and stuff. Liliana is saying that her Trinidad dwarf, drinks a lot, so the Holothele longipes, I definitely think that that one is a very moisture dependent species. They come from
Yes.
Trinidad, which is, like, right there in the Caribbean, so I would expect that's pretty normal for them,
Mhm.
you know?
Definitely. Yeah, we keep their soil pretty damp. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Mhm. Yep.
Ryan, do you have a favorite species of tarantula? Just in general.
Yes. Of tarantula, yeah. I do the Metallica, the Poecilotheria, the whole genus really is what started this for me, so I can't not
Yeah.
show love for them. That genus, we have a lot of spiders. That species, that genus rather, they stop
Uh,
me in my tracks every time because they come out during the evening, being crepuscular and whatnot. And
yeah.
every time I walk by their tanks, if I see them, I'm like, wow. It's still
They
to this
are
day, I'm like
truly
that.
stunning. I
It's
agree.
amazing. Yeah,
It's such
I
a
can't
treat
help
to
it.
see them out too.
Yeah, yeah, they're big and they're bold, they're beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Metallica for sure, but that whole genus is perfect. I love them to death.
I feel like they get kind of a bad rep. Do you agree?
100%. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
to
right?
me they're the easiest species to work with, or genus rather. Yeah, yeah.
They're so cool.
Unpopular.
Like,
They're amazing.
yeah, they're just little darlings. I just saw a fellow, content creator talking about their pokies and how the pokey was super patient, like waiting for her to rehouse it. And I was like,
Yeah,
yeah, they're darlings, Like
they are.
I was actually really kind of nervous about having Poecilotheria in my collection
Mhm.
from the start, and the first one that I got was a Poecilotheria metallica. It was totally an
Okay.
accident. I bought it
Okay.
as yeah, I bought it as a Kilobranchis fimbriatus.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
yeah, right. I was like,
Yeah.
same area, different species.
Close. Yep.
Yeah,
That's silly.
but yeah, it was so funny. But yeah, I
What's
mean,
your favorite? Are they your favorite? What's your favorite if you had to pick one?
I'm such a geek for Aphonopelmas, like the Aphonopelma
Oh,
caucodes and Hensies and stuff. They made me totally change my mind on the color brown. Like I
yes,
always thought
I
that
would agree with you.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I
Yep.
always thought, okay, brown is just brown, whatever,
Brown is
but
brown. Yeah.
y- Afonapelmas, man, they're gonna show you that there's some red brown, there's some like tans, there are some just beautiful gold
Yeah.
colors. Like they are
Hmm.
amazing,
I'm
absolutely
with you
amazing.
there. That's funny. It's so funny you say that. I agree with you there. Yeah, I like the tan colors, the sandy tans, and all that. They're beautiful, beautiful spiders. I agree with
Absolutely,
you.
yeah, they're so
And
cool.
their nature is just nice. The docile, you know what I
They're
mean?
so
And
yeah,
they make
super
good
chill.
little pets. Yeah.
Never eat.
Yeah, there's that too. Yeah, which for some can be a source of frustration, but
A
yeah,
little bit, yeah,
understand that's
but
where understanding where they come from and what happens to them and what they do in nature, that's where it's very important. You understand why they do what they do certain times of the
yes,
year, right? Just go off
absolutely,
feed and just
absolutely.
disappear. That's a healthy spider, you know?
Right,
So,
right.
yeah,
If you're not seeing it through the winter, you're good.
exactly. That's where it
You
wants
know.
to be. Yep. Yep.
So, kind of segueing into that, how do you feel about conservation as far as like specific species or just tarantulas in general? Because a lot of the tarantulas that we keep, they are on that protected species list. So how do you feel
Yes.
about that? Like,
Yes. So that is a double-edged sword. And also,
yes,
I have a bit of a different opinion on it because of my background. I've
okay,
seen the other side. I've worked with people who are on the other side who are on CITES. Um, and I've done some international work with conservation with amphibians. So I kind of understand the optics of our, as far as like what the pet trade looks like to other countries and to
uh-huh,
people on CITES. We're not good. um, and I say
yeah,
that lightly. You have to understand how I'm meaning that. I'm not the best with words, but we're not viewed in the eyes of anything to do with conservation as a positive. Okay.
mm,
And that's just the way it is. Now, the double-edged sword of that, a lot of where these animals are coming from, let's just take Sri Lanka, for example. Um,
sure,
the pet trade is going to be the only place to see these animals in the next few years because of
yeah,
deforestation and logging. And so it's like, while the hobby itself doesn't directly contribute to conservation, that's going to be
mm,
the source of them. And then from the hobby, they will make their way into AZA institutions, which then maybe genetic testing might be done, and which place actual proper conservation efforts might take place.
mhm.
Um, that might happen, right? But
I,
yeah, so
y- I kind of
it's
vow, like, if I ever do any kind of breeding, I want to donate like a portion of the sack to my local zoological society. So, like the
sure.
Denver Zoo, or
Yes.
super lucky here in Denver, we have the Butterfly Pavilion, and they do breed
Yep.
tarantulas. They do a
Cool.
ton for like conservation. So, I would probably donate some specimen to them.
Yeah, I think that's what the hobby can do is reaching out
Mm,
to these people, especially like if you go to your ACA institution, they know who's in charge of the SSP or who the SSP Species Survival Plan Coordinator is for individual
hmm.
species. I know there's quite a few for invertebrates. Asking how and you can contribute, I think, is the best way to go about that. Um,
Awesome.
and yeah, I think that's where I'll leave that. But understanding, I'm not dumb. I understand that a lot of animals are here. All of them originated from wild caught animals,
Oh,
right?
of course.
So,
Yeah.
and I absolutely love my hobby. I love my spiders to death. But I think it
Yeah.
would do the hobby good for everyone to understand how we are viewed, and that might
Yeah.
change some behaviors and some ethics and some morals on how we go about obtaining and selling healthy animals. Like optics are everything, especially now in this sort of
Hmm.
climate. Um, yeah.
No, I
So
really appreciate that, Ryan. I think that's incredibly smart because I think a lot of time here in the U.S. we kind of forget how we're viewed through the world, and so
correct.
yeah, just a little too much. I agree, and so yeah, I
Yeah.
do think that capitalism can be very dangerous for the hobby. I think it can be dangerous to conservation,
Yes.
especially I want the spider, I want it now. Like that
Correct.
mindset is just not healthy for what we're trying to do. So
Exactly. Yeah. And I know people like to be like, well, it came into the hobby legally. It was a legal importation. Yes. However, the laws are different in Europe. So if you
hmm.
went or wherever they're going and taking these animals, the laws are different over there. It doesn't apply. right? So
Right.
we might be importing them legally, but they left their country of origin illegally, right? Even if
Right.
you didn't do it, if the United States didn't do it. So I think that's another thing too that we all need
Yeah.
to be conscious of. Like we need to support sustainable, legal. I don't have the answer for that necessarily. I think what Mexico was doing, provided that was actually ethically and morally happening,
Hmm.
is great, right? Where like animals
Yeah.
are taken from the wild, some are put back, some are sold to the pet trade, right? And then whatever that country of origin does with that money, whatever, right? But that's
Sure.
a sustainable approach to both things, right? Just
I
getting that
agree.
to happen successfully is I'm not in control of that, so I don't have an answer for that. But that would be a good step in the right direction, I think.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that.
You're
So
welcome.
Bazance has a really good question about breeding. So Bazance wants to know, why do you think Balfours lay their sacks in hammocks instead of carrying the sack around? Because they have no idea.
Yeah, good question. So I have seen it, I've noticed a trend. Animals that live in clay or sandy substrate or soils tend to do this. So like Harpactira pulchripes, I'm
Hmm.
pulling this. Just this is my observation. Okay, so just take that for what it's worth. But
Yeah.
pulchripes, I've seen GVBs do it, Chromatopelma do it, Monocentropas, like you said, Belfry do it.
Hmm.
And also another trend with these is that there's really intense UV and sun exposure where these animals are where
Mm.
they live. I think it all comes down to natural history. So I think the sandy soil might has something to do with it. Also,
Hmm.
there's high UV exposure, and where these animals are, they have easy access to like constant brooding temperatures, so like high
Yeah.
temperatures, right? So it
Right.
might be beneficial to lay them in a hammock suspended in somewhere where it's getting those appropriate brooding temps all the time. It's
All the
less
time.
work for the mom. Um, that makes sense to me. But there's like a trend I'm noticing with animals that do that. And there might be something that does it that does not apply. It's just not. I haven't worked with that species yet. But that's a possibility. There's a couple things going on there. Yeah,
Awesome. I like that.
yeah,
I appreciate that.
yeah. Something about.
Carrie wants to.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead.
Nope, nope. Go ahead. We'll move on. I
Okay.
think I answered your question. I ramble. You have to stop me.
Oh, you're so good, Ryan. We love it. We love it. You can ramble all you want
Okay.
here.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries. So Carrie says, how do you go how do you best express like conservation efforts and issues to a community at the exotic shows? So like when you're at expos or something and you're just concerned that maybe they have like a wild caught specimen, how do you go about
Mm,
saying, hey, this isn't really great for the hobby, this isn't really great for the species?
yep.
What would your
So
suggestion be?
this is a fantastic question. So Jessica and I have been doing a lot more expos lately. This year and next year, we plan to keep doing that. We're actually working with Tristan of Gecko Junkie to establish a new base of shows under the name Run It
Cool.
Reptile Expo. And this is something that we talk about because we know it's a problem. And especially with me on board,
Uh-huh.
having my background, I'm the first to say this is messed up, guys. You know what I mean? And so, like in our little huddle, we discuss these things. Like it starts with the show promoters. It starts with who's running the show and who's screening, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
we discussed potentially, I think I can say this, but like a panel of a group of people, whoever that may be, that regulates and filters these things. Because, like I said, some people just may not know. I know good people, well intentioned people who don't know the origin of the species and its entrance into the country.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's not their fault necessarily. There are a lot of people who are at fault. I know a bunch.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that comes down to shutting that down at the door. That's at the gate. Um, Documentation is easy to produce. A
Right.
paper trail
Right.
is easy to produce for those of you who are serious. And if you're not serious, well, we were not going to give you a platform, right? It's
Good.
difficult because, like I said, you can't just strip people's livelihoods away, but
Right.
educating them and giving them the chance to fix it and be better about their practices is the way to go about it, right? If you just say nope
Yeah.
and you give them an axe right away, you're not going to make friends and they're just going to do it anyway. But I think
Right.
we all just need to promote this better at shows at the door, I think. And that
I do
starts
too.
with the promoters, yeah, and screening and filtering what comes through the door for sure.
I always appreciate when I do go to shows and expos, I always appreciate a table who's like, I support US Arc. And so they'll
Sure.
have like the USARK logo and all that stuff, I always appreciate that because to me that says you are being conservation minded and you're worried, you're thinking about that.
The bigger
Or
picture.
yes,
Yes.
exactly, the bigger picture.
Hmm.
And so
Yes.
I think that's also another really key element that some breeders just they don't know, or maybe they just don't
Hmm.
want to, or whatever. But for
Hmm.
me, I'm like, yeah, if you got USARK, I am all over it. So
Yeah, so you're touching on optics, right?
yeah,
And it needs to be there needs to be an incentive for people to do better, right? So
I
that's where
agree.
I think like having this little green check mark or a blue check mark, you know what I mean? Something like that that says we're
Mhm,
doing the right thing. We care about your hobby. I care about my hobby. I care about the
right.
animals you are going to possess if you buy them from me. It needs to be cool. It needs to be sexy to do that. Does that mean conservation
Yeah,
needs to be sexy, right?
it does.
Otherwise, there's no
Yes,
incentive. Yeah, otherwise, who
right.
cares? Right.
I'm with you on this.
Exactly.
I'm with you.
Yep. Yep.
Do you ever get to work with Tom Patterson or Kelly Fornes or any of these guys? Like, do you get to work with them?
Yeah.
Like, do you get to trade with them? Hey, I've got
Great
this
question.
mail, or
Yes.
hate to name
Yes.
drop, but
Oh, yeah, I know. I got to be careful, but I get in trouble doing these name drop things. But yeah, all of them, all of those times, there's a bunch of them now. But most
so
of
many
them we've
Toms.
had very good experiences with them. It's been a pleasure dealing with them. Yeah, Kelly, I think we've gotten animals from Kelly before. I can't remember, but at least the Toms I know for sure.
Mm.
There's a bunch of them now, but yes. Sometimes we will supplement our collection or our inventory with animals that have, like Tom Saxon produces quite a bit of animals. We've supplemented from him before, and then we do some
Hmm.
trading odds and ends with males. We're at the point now in our collection where males are much more valuable to us than females because we just have females, right? They're just sitting
Yeah,
around. So knowing these Toms, really, it does help. So
it does.
yes,
I agree.
yeah,
Well,
most of them
cool.
are easy to work with. Yeah.
Is Tom Patterson really like as cranky? He
No,
said.
it's funny. I know people will dog on his attitude, but I'm like, I'm right there with him. He's just
I
very
love his
blunt and
attitude.
straightforward. Yeah, and I like the way
Yeah,
he feels about the hobby and how his bluntness. I'm like, yep,
yeah.
that's it. That's what's going to happen. It's okay to kind of have a bleak attitude about like longevity about the hobby, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because optics are everything, and I think he gets that. He's been doing this a long time,
Yeah.
so he kind of see when you're doing this something a long time, you see the shifts and the ebbs
You
and the
see the
flows and how
patterns.
things work. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
like the ripples and, makes sense.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
No, I love it. I really
Hmm.
appreciate that. I know I feel like a lot of people are kind of like, "Oh, so many Tom, a lot of Toms in the US hobby here." And
Uh-huh.
they do kind of get treated like celebrities, which is probably cool for them. But I
Sure.
think Tom Patterson is cool. Like, I think I love his rock and roll attitude. I think he's
Same.
just all around great guy.
Yep.
And I
Same.
love what he does for the hobby. So
Same. Yeah,
I'm
he's
with
got his
it.
own thing. I'm envious. I like the way he does his thing. He doesn't, he's mindful of what he says, but also is not afraid to shoot from the hip, and I like that. I like that style quite a bit. So, yep,
Yeah.
yep. Big
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, if okay, so this one is another kind of off topic, but it's a cool question. I thought maybe would be a lot of fun. If you could
Yeah.
travel anywhere in the world to like observe tarantulas in the wild, where would you go and why?
Interesting. I want to ask you the same question.
Okay.
So for me, Ecuador, that's so this is funny. I don't have a retirement plan. Period.
Okay.
When I'm ready to be done, I'm going to Ecuador. Ever since was old enough to remember, I know the Amazon as a place. Ecuador, Peru, Costa Rica, not Costa Rica, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but anything in South America. Costa Rica, Central American people. uh, but yes, so Ecuador, Peru, those places, that's where I'm going to go. And I know once I go, I'm not coming back. But I really like my avicularia species. I would love to say India and
Awesome.
go see Metallica. However, I know the logistics of that and how dangerous that is.
Yeah.
So that's not on the table for me, being realistic. But when I'm ready to go, Ecuador, Peru is where I'm going, and I have no plans on coming back when I'm finally ready to go. So, yep, that's my plan. That's where I would like to go and see all the avicularia species. And I get pictures from zoo folks who still go down and do amphibian research down there, and they send me pictures of tarantulas that I know are not in the hobby, I know are not described yet. They're like, "Oh, look at this little thing," and they're awesome
Wow.
looking. So, and I don't share the pictures because I'm like, I'm not letting that get out. But
Right, right.
there's so many cool animals that the hobby's never seen before, and they're all down in the rainforest. And I would like to go check them out. That's where I'd like to go. How about you?
Absolutely. I mean, probably in the same region, but Colombia. For me, it's about Colombia. I
Nice.
would absolutely love to just, for a lot of reasons. So obviously, like the tarantulas that are in Colombia. I mean,
Yep.
we have. I swear a third of my collection is from Colombia.
Cool.
Um, like,
Yep.
and it's pretty close to Brazil too. That there's some fun times there, but the culture in Colombia is wonderful. They're very like fun, lively, colorful people. They
Hmm.
they love dance, they love music, and they love people from all over the place. I know that that region of the world sometimes has issues just in general with like civil issues
Yes.
and
Yeah. Can
civil
be
war stuff like
dangerous.
that.
Yeah.
Governmental issues and stuff, but when it comes down to it, like the actual people who are living there are amazing. And so I would
Awesome.
just absolutely love to visit. And then of course see the Monocentropus or Megaphobema robustums. Those are the guys.
Oh, yep.
They would
Yeah.
be fun to view in
Those
the
are
wild.
montane too, right? They're a montane species,
Yeah, I
or are they
believe
not?
so.
Are they okay? Because I feel like I've seen pictures of them on moss beds, really wet moss beds, and I don't
Yeah,
think
they're
those are captive photos. I think maybe I'm wrong.
I'm not, I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to look that up because I don't know.
Yeah,
Um
if it is true, like what the pictures I'm seeing, I'm like, that's neat. Yeah, and I know there are some montane regions in Colombia, so um, definitely going to one of those places that has those biomes, like cloud forest and also lowland rainforest. If you're going to go anywhere, I would say go somewhere that has both, because you're essentially
yes.
seeing two different worlds in one place. Yeah,
Right. Oh,
for sure.
that's just too cool. It's too cool.
Hmm. It is too cool. And Colombia also, those little dendrobatids, the poison frogs.
Oh, yeah.
I can't believe I just blanked on that. My zoo people are gonna laugh at me. Phyllobates terribilis, the golden poison frog. Those are all in Colombia too, so that would be a cool one to see. That would
Yeah,
be really
I
cool.
mean, Colombia is just
Yeah,
full of a lot of really cool wildlife, like
I know. I'm
spiders
so
and
jealous.
everything. Yeah,
Yeah,
right? I'm so jealous. I
and everyone who
wonder,
lives there, they're just like, yeah, they're there. Who cares, you know? But to
right.
us, it's like that's the coolest thing ever, you know?
I wonder
Yeah,
if people in Australia think that too, like, because in Australia, there's all amazing wildlife there too they're just
yeah.
so iconic, like koalas
Hmm.
and
All the
the
monitor
gators and
lizards. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. So I
yes.
wonder if
I,
I'm sure people in Australia are like, "Oh yeah, it's just a Woma python," and we're over here like, "Oh, awesome,"
Yeah. Well, you see, Jessica she's in all these Facebook groups from Australia where it's like Snake ID. And it's funny how it's like there's was that in my place? Did you hear that? Was that from me?
I don't, I don't. Yeah, I heard it.
I think the dog must have fell upstairs or something. Um, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. So the snakes are just like a part of their life, right? Like
Uh,
they're like, oh, there's pythons on my porch again, or oh, he lives there. You know, it's like they're just part of their culture, which I think is really neat. Here we're like, oh, kill it, you know, or oh, get it away,
I
gross.
hate
Just
that.
call the exterminator. Yeah, but they're like, oh, there he goes. Like you'll see an eastern or a brown snake or something venomous. Everything venomous down there. Just
Right.
weaving right through someone's, property, and it's fine. It's just part of life. Yeah,
That's cool though. I mean, because yeah, the states we're so weird when it comes to snakes and spiders. I think
I
because
know.
we're
We
just
we
we're just
are
raised to be hateful toward them, and the
right.
media doesn't really help much as far as that goes. Because of course they
They
always
do not.
depict, or yeah, like the spiders are
Yeah,
always like the bad guys or whatever.
yeah.
Um,
With the
Although I
exception
will,
of those jumping spiders, right? You've seen in the
yeah,
media,
right,
jumping spiders are coming, they're hot because of media, so
yes,
at least
yes,
there's that. Yeah.
yeah. I
I'll
mean,
give them some credit.
there is some credit to be given. Is it like Eight-Legged Freaks, that movie? It
Hmm.
The spiders were kind of scary, but they
Yes.
used actual species
Yeah, which
for
is
their
interesting. Yeah, I like
right. Which for me, I was like, okay, I'll give you credit there because that's cool.
that. You thought about it, right? You thought about this. Yeah, a little bit.
Right, right, right.
Yeah, made it fun.
Yes, and then
Yeah.
yeah. So okay, a Faunapelma. Do you love them or hate them? You love
I
them. We already
am
talked about.
Yeah, I would say I wouldn't call them necessarily a favorite of mine, but there's something to be said about the species or the genus in general for a lot of people. And I think if you're going to do this and you're going to be in this industry, this hobby, I think it's a staple.
Yes,
Um, yeah, yeah, I like that. I like them. Yeah,
I love it. Yeah,
that's how I feel about them. I think they're pretty cool. Yeah,
awesome.
and they're a great way to teach people about, like backyard conservation, backyard species. I know they're a good source of study for folks too, which there's something to be said for that too. We have access to them and we can watch them, right? So,
Yeah, yeah,
yep,
absolutely. I think it's pretty fascinating too because they are still discovering new Faunapelma species. Like,
yeah, in our
you know,
backyards, I mean,
yeah,
it's wild. It's
absolutely.
so cool.
Like the what was it? The Faunapelma, species Diamondback still hasn't been
Hmm.
described, but it's right
Yeah,
here.
we know it's there. Yeah,
Yeah.
man, I know. There's just, and that speaks to something too. Like I kind of get preachy about this, but there's so much complexity to all of this that we just
Mm,
we haven't even scratched the surface. You know what I mean? So like when
yeah.
people start talking about the animals having, a little more depth cognitively, you know what I mean? And like a little more evolved. They're not just so primitive like we put them out to be. Yes, some of their characteristics are, but there's just so
Yeah.
much more to learn and study. And like we're just now starting to understand that there's more. Right now we got to dive
Right.
in and figure out that more. And species like a faunapelma that we can actually grab and discover in our backyards and watch and observe. It's very important for conservation. It puts them on the map. So yeah,
Absolutely. I,
big
you
fan
know,
of that.
I really appreciate that you're conservation minded. I think all the best breeders are, and
I
I
would
mean, for
agree.
me, that speaks volumes because I do think that a lot of people in the hobby are leaning that way,
Hmm.
more so than
There's a
anything,
shift. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which is
and
great.
yeah, it is. I agree. I agree with you 100%. I still think we have a lot of catching up to do. I think the
Yeah,
arachnid hobby is a little behind. But then again, you could say that about our industry as a whole because it's not regulated, right? It's like up to
right.
passionate people to like be loud and talk about it. Otherwise,
Yeah,
there's no like board or registry or something like that that's like regulating these things. So, yeah,
right,
we're getting
right.
there. You're right. There's been a shift. I
There
agree.
has been, yeah, and I love that.
Me too.
I think it's in a good direction, and yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
so we're actually getting to the end of the podcast, and so this is
Okay.
kind of the portion that we like to call our shameless plug. So this is
Okay.
where you can throw anything you want to promote. Obviously,
Okay.
cool Marshall Arachnid stuff. So have at it, Ryan.
Sure. Sure. Well, and thank you. Thank you for giving us the time. Jess and I,
Yeah,
obviously, MarshallArachnids.com. We're on all the socials. I think everything is just Marshall Arachnids in one way or another. It's not my forte. Jessica and I are actually taking a break right now. We're kind of, so fun fact, we, as of 2 weeks ago, just finally got a shower. So we've been here like 7 months now, and now we got a shower installed. So, um, yeah, I mean,
well,
her
good.
mom's not far away. We shout, we clean ourselves, but we're taking a break to kind of catch up. Now we're kind of slowing down. Our live animal shipping is suspended until February, just for the
Yeah,
sake of the
yeah, the
madness. You know what I
weather.
mean? And yeah, exactly. So we're taking a little pause, a little break. We still have a few items up. You can still purchase things on our website, marshallarachnids.com. Um, I
Cool.
think that's that. Yeah, just be patient with us. We're doing all of the renovation and all the construction ourselves at this point, so like we're really focused on that. So if we don't get back to you when you reach out to us, just give us a minute. Jess is doing husbandry. I'm hammering away or trying to figure out how to install something. I don't know. So
Yeah.
be patient with us. But yeah, Leah, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me and getting us out there on your platform. It's super awesome. We're really grateful for that. So thank you.
Oh, no, I'm so grateful to you for coming on and really, help it. I help you, you help me, we help each other. That's what
Yeah,
it's about.
let's talk again. Yeah, let's do it. Let's make it a thing.
Absolutely.
I would love to continue talking to you about other topics in depth, and maybe we could talk about different species. I'm
Yeah,
all about it. Anytime we can take these conversations and put them out there, I'm all about it. So you just
absolutely.
holler.
I Go ahead.
You holler whenever you want to talk.
Yeah,
We'll make the
same,
time.
same. Absolutely. If
Okay.
there's something that's burning in your brain, and you
Oh,
wanna come
always,
and well, I love that,
always.
Ryan. I think that's really cool, and,
Cool.
um, like I said, yeah, thanks so much. So for everybody out there, I'll go ahead and shamelessly plug my podcast, InvertiCast.
Yes.
If you like what you saw, like and subscribe, share it with your friends, send it to people who you know would appreciate it. Thank you again so much, Ryan, for being here. We really appreciate it, and
Thank you,
glad
Leah.
that we were able to provide kind of a platform for yeah for you to
Yep.
yeah
Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Yes. I love this. So thank you guys. And hopefully we'll talk again soon. Okay.
definitely. Thank you, Ryan. Have a great
Thank you,
one.
Leah. You as well. We'll talk soon.